connect right away.
Sure.
Hey, good morning. It's Sean from Traffic Services, and we are live from Studio B. I don't know. We have to come up with a name for this place. It is June 16th, and we are joined by Brandon, my partner from Traffic Safety Programs, and of course, Sgt Clint Stibbe from the Vision Zero Enforcement Team. We're talking about a couple of things today. First, we're going to talk about what Vision Zero, or where they are today, what they're doing in relation to the two-wheel safety campaign that's currently going on in the city. And then we're going to talk about impaired driving stats from the weekend briefly at the end. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. We are, of course, online live on both Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So if you are watching on any one of those platforms and have questions for any one of the three of us, feel free to drop a question in the box. It will show up on screen. We will talk about it and answer your questions live. So let's get into it. Brandon, where is the Vision Zero Enforcement Team going to be today?
The Vision Zero Enforcement Team is going to be in 52 Division as well as 55 Division. Bear with me, everybody. My mouse is a bit of a mess today. However, if you go to torontopolice.on.ca, as we've spoken about before, you can go /divisions, and you can have a full interactive map of the city, and then you can pick your area where you might be within and then find out information about your division. So if you're in 52 today, your division is right here. You can click on the neighborhood. It will expand the map and give you a full look at the area, and it even lists right down there on the divisional boundaries where you are. So it's west to Lower Spadina, north to Bloor Street, east to Yonge Street, and then the shoreline. 55 Division, same thing. We would go and we click 55 Division, gives us the interactive map, so we can blow that up and we can look at exactly where we are. Once we pull up our map, we will see that we are going north to Eglinton, all the way down to the shoreline, and then the east side is to Victoria Park Avenue. Again, torontopolice.on.ca /divisions to find out more about your division.
Awesome. Thank you. So right over to you, Sergeant Stibbe. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. First time on our morning show that is still nameless. We have to come up with a name.
Well, you know what? I'm sure you will. You've got the talent for coming up with unique angles, so I'm sure you'll come up with a good name for the
Thanks very much. So we're day 3 into a 7-day safety campaign focusing on basically things that it's two-wheel safety. So we're focusing on motorcycle safety, bicycle safety, but just because we're focusing on those, the VZET team is still involved in all traffic. The big four really feeds into that. So what's been going on the road? What are you seeing?
Well, what we are seeing is, unfortunately, still a lot of impatience on the side of drivers. Even yesterday, we were up in the North End, and I got somebody speeding at 103 and a 50. And in their perspective, they were only going 10 kilometers per hour over the posted limit. Well, even 10 kilometers per hour over the posted limit still can kill somebody. Everybody has to realize that Vision Zero is looking at reducing serious or fatal collisions. They do occur, but they're unacceptable. And we are trying to reduce the number of vehicles or drivers that are involved in these collisions so we can save lives. But what we also have to keep in mind is cyclists and pedestrians are the most vulnerable road users we have. Cyclists at most maybe has a helmet on, but when you are involved in a collision with a driver of a motor vehicle who's got airbags, steel cage around them, seat belts, chances are the driver's not the one that's getting injured, it's the cyclist. So our job is to hold drivers accountable for their actions. And what we are seeing, unfortunately, is a lack of accountability. I mean, individuals thinking that they don't have to adhere to the laws. We had one person yesterday that was in a rush to get somewhere. We stopped them, and they said it was an emergency for the wife. So we took that person's license. We know who they are. Expected them to come back a short time later. This morning, we served them at 5:30 in the morning, knocking on their door because they thought maybe by not coming back, they're not going to get charged. The reality is people that are driving like this are putting everybody at risk. So we have to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. And we talk about vulnerable road users, bicycles. We're talking about motorcycles. There were a couple of collisions last week that involved motorcycles being rear-ended. It's not necessarily because motorcycles are doing something dangerous that they're involved in collisions. Very often it is driver behavior, distracted driving, simple minor things that become very serious when you involve a motorcycle, a cyclist, or of course a pedestrian. So your team is out focusing on the big four. That's the speeding, aggressive, distracted, or impaired driving. Is there one that stands out as more prevalent or more than another, that's a bigger issue in the city?
Absolutely. Speeding, hands down, is the number one issue we're seeing. Distracted driving, I would say, is number two. A lot of the sign offenses, the prohibited turns, they are a problem. But generally, you're not seeing a lot of the pedestrians being struck as a result of that. It does occur at intersections, but not usually against a sign that says you're not supposed to turn. It's usually at those left turns or right turns that are permitted. That's where we are seeing pedestrians that are struck. That being said, cyclists quite often are along the side of a motor vehicle. As everybody starts to move forward, the driver not looking is hitting that cyclist. So again, it boils down to being aware of your surroundings. And unfortunately, when you're absorbed into your cell phone, maybe sending that chat, maybe shopping for flowers, which I've had happen during Valentine's Day. I mean, everyone's got an excuse. Nobody wants to take responsibility. And the reality is there's no excuse for what you're doing. You are putting somebody's life at risk, in some cases, killing that person.
And if you're in a car and you've got a device like an iPhone or an Android device, there's so much technology there that allows you to be hands-free, truly hands-free. Now, you can be distracted by mentally focusing on trying to send an email, even verbally, but at least you're not holding the phone. So if, very often I'll, ask my GPS to route my, or to find me a route to go somewhere. Just how do I get to such and such address? I don't have to touch it at all. So there's really no excuse in today's modern age with all the technology we have to touch your device and take your focus off the one thing that you need to do properly to save a life.
Well, what's interesting, and you just made that comment, and I was going to flag that to you as well. When you're having a conversation with somebody on the phone, you are distracted. Granted, it is not one that is chargeable under law, but if you do hurt somebody or kill somebody as a result of the way you're operating that motor vehicle, even if you're on hands-free, Bluetooth, whatever the case may be, you will still be held accountable. And if that was an aggravating factor, the fact that you're on the phone talking to your husband, your wife, your spouse, your significant other, family, friends, whatever, and you have not paid attention to what you're doing with that motor vehicle, you could be facing criminal charges. So you need to keep in mind, put the phone down, concentrate on the driving, because you know what the reality is, we can't do two things well. We can do one thing well, two things, not so much.
We were just talking about this a few weeks ago with Scott Marshall, who's a podcaster. He's a blogger. He's a former judge on Canada's Worst Driver, and he talks about the fact that you can't really do things. You can't do two things at once unless one of them's automated. And the problem with that is the automated stuff. When you're driving and you just show up where you're going and you don't know how you got there, and it's happened to everybody. You're too tired. You got home, but you're like, wow, the last 5-10 minutes is a blur. It happens even more frequently when you're on a telephone. Your focus is really on the concept or the subject that you're discussing, and then you get somewhere and you really were distracted. And if that's not an alert, then I don't know what is. That you are not paying attention to the one thing you should be focused on. And I don't want to harp on it, but there are features that you can turn off and make do not disturb when you're driving. And you know what? Driving is enough work on its own. The risks to life and if you want to be not worried about life, but you want to worry about your insurance, when you get into minor fender benders, that's a big thing. If you hurt someone, it's not only something mentally you'll have to deal with, it's going to cost you big time. So, leave the phone till later. You can ignore your phone. It's allowed. I give you permission. Ignore your phone.
Yeah, well, you know what? And even yesterday, that person I stopped at 103 and a 50, they said, well, it was a red light. It's like, not the light that you went through. It was a solid green, and I was at the red light when I see him go through the intersection at 103. Imagine hitting somebody at that speed. 103, first of all, there's no way that person would survive. The damage to another vehicle and your vehicle and yourself would be catastrophic. And we're talking on a city street. We're not talking on an expressway. An expressway is where you're allowed to go 100 kilometers or 90 kilometers, depending on where you are in the city of Toronto. But you're doing 103 kilometers per hour on a city street that is relatively close to a community area, like a small shopping mall, where seniors cross the street. But if you think you can stop that car on the dime, I'd argue you're going to need a significant amount of distance to stop that car. And by then, somebody's probably either grievously injured or even killed.
Yeah, I don't think people understand the gravity of their actions very often, because no one gets up and says, today I'm going to hurt somebody. At least the average person doesn't do that. And, the scenes that we've gone to, that we've investigated, the aftermath is horrible. And the lives and the communities that are affected, it's never the same. Somebody's entire world will change based on you needed to go a little faster or wanting to go faster to save a few minutes. And my pro tip of the day, plan ahead. And I'll tell you what I do. I put out my clothes for the next day. before I go to bed. I set up my laptop bag and all the things I'm taking. They're right at the door, so I know what's there. I don't have to look for anything.
Absolutely.
I know what time, and in that way, there's no confusion, there's no distractions, there's no excuses for not getting out the door, other than if you sleep in, to make you late. And I also plan for the appropriate amount of time, taking into consideration that there could be delays. If you have that, you can rest easy and be stress-free on your ride. There's absolutely no reason to speed.
Well, what's interesting about what you just said regarding no reason to speed, you're absolutely right. If you were planning ahead, if you did give yourself that time, and yesterday's a perfect example, she's late for work. Well, okay, whose fault is that? And how has it now become everybody else's problem that you're driving like a maniac because she's late for work? So the passenger is who I'm referring to. But one of the things that we've noticed is that several, or I'd say almost 50% of the stunt driving charges that we've laid over the last week included a G1 or G2 driver.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that the fully licensed drivers are any better, but what's surprising to see is the significant number of inexperienced drivers that are being caught for those speeds because they think they can drive faster, because they think there's no repercussions. The reality is when they are stopped for these types of offenses, and if they are convicted, they can be removed from the graduated licensing programs. But they're not looking at it like that. They're just looking at, I'm having a good time, I'm driving a car fast. What are the repercussions? Well, we've got unmarked vehicles, and a lot of the stunt drivers we caught were in unmarked vehicles because generally when they see a police car, they slow down. And one of the other things I want to point out is, yes, we are in 52 and 55 division today, but that doesn't mean we won't be in other places. That's primarily where we are. Mm-hmm. So I don't want people to think, well, I'm in another division, say 14, and I'm not going to get caught. That's not the case. The reality is we have traffic enforcement officers and units throughout the city. Those officers look at complaint areas, deal with general patrols and whatnot. So it's not just the Vision Zero team that's out there making the road safer. We actually have other officers in other divisions. So there is enforcement in every division. There's heightened enforcement in the divisions that we are in. So I just want to remind everybody that just because we're in those two primarily doesn't mean you're not going to get caught for doing something wrong.
Absolutely. Every police officer in the city of Toronto has the ability to write a ticket. It doesn't mean that you have to be part of the Vision Zero enforcement team. They're just augmenting, focusing their efforts to target those areas based on, as I say, people with big brains who do work to determine which are the high-risk areas, which areas need more attention, and they have charts and things that determine where we go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Talking about getting somewhere on time and leaving early, so you're late before you even walk out your door. That's where the planning comes in, because you're not late because something happened on the road more often than not. So that's it's a mindset, and you can choose to save a life, maybe your own, by just planning ahead and taking it easy. Enjoy the drive, and don't worry about meeting the Vision Zero enforcement team or any one of our fine officers for a reason that's going to make you unhappy.
Absolutely,
it really ruins the day when you get it.
Well, you know what? Our job is to make the day better for other people, and if that means stopping somebody that is driving aggressively, or distracted, or speeding, or impaired, you know what? We make the day better by saving that life. We may never see that person that we saved, but the reality is by getting people like this off the road, stopping them from committing these offenses, is saving lives just by keeping other people out of jeopardy.
And it's something you just reminded me of. Yesterday, I spoke to a group of soldiers with the Canadian Armed Forces. They are new drivers. They're getting their military driver's licenses, and fantastic group from experienced to brand new drivers. And something we talked about, we watched a video from TAC. It's an Australian video, and it talks about a driver who's going through a neighborhood. He speeds up, he slows down, and he changes the behavior based on the observations of police. He sees police, he slows down. He doesn't see police, he accelerates. And at the end of the video, which is fantastic, well, and horrifying, is he loses control for completely unrelated reasons, spins off, goes into a field. We discussed afterwards the motivation behind his behavior. Well, he was trying to avoid getting caught. Not that his behavior, he wasn't trying to avoid getting hurt. He was trying to avoid getting caught because he didn't want the ticket. Mm-hmm. Tickets save lives, because we might give you a ticket, it'll sting, but it might change your behavior next time. And that's really the goal. It's not to punish you so much as change your behavior. They say the lucky ones get caught, because if we can stop you from doing it again, you might live longer.
Absolutely. And you know what? And that's, that being said, we've also had people that we've stopped within 20 minutes of another speeding ticket. We stop them. It happens so regularly. And I would argue that to some degree, it's habitual versus spontaneous. That person has a habit of failing to stop at the stop sign, has a habit of speeding. The environment, a road that is designed for 70 could be dialed back to 40 with the new regulations from the city of Toronto. So that person thinks, well, 40 is too slow for this road, and they start to speed up because from their perspective, that's okay. But the reality is, all these things are being put in place as part of the Vision Zero project. It's being done to save lives. And the challenge that we have is getting everybody to recognize that these things are being done to save lives. And you have the option, or not the option, the ability to save somebody's life by slowing down.
There's a lot of discussion on TikTok, which is a very active community that follows us, and we have about 87,000 followers now. Now, the question keeps coming up: are we going to see an increase in speed on our highways? Or are we going to see an increase in speed in the city because there's a belief that it's just too slow, that there's no reason for it, according to the questions and some of our participants. But we have 3 wards in the city of Toronto that are proposing a reduction of speed to 30 kilometers an hour because it's the only way to buy reaction time, to get more distance to save a life. It all comes down to protecting lives.
So it was interesting. I was out towards Niagara Falls there, St. Catharines, and I was using Waze to negotiate traffic because the traffic was somewhat heavy. But on the speed limit on Waze, it says that the speed limit is now 110 on the QEW out towards St. Catharines.
That's right.
So I didn't know that. So even my wife commented, "Oh, they've increased the speed." So are they increasing the speed on the highways? Yes, but it's a highway. It's not a city street. So the reduction of the speeds down to 30 kilometers per hour, your stopping ability is even more increased. The slower you go, the faster you can stop.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the faster you go, the slower you can stop. So
right.
By reducing that speed, do you inversely save lives? Absolutely.
Brandon, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to say that people, if we talk about the TikTok again, people on TikTok are always saying in the comments, "Oh, but the Autobahn, Germany, they have no speed limits." Well, that road was specifically designed to handle that type of driving, and again, it's not even designed to have 0 speed limits everywhere. So clearly, the government has decided that in that particular area towards St. Catharines, yeah, it can handle that. But there's other highways and there's other areas, specifically within the city, that are going to probably see where some areas see an increase, other areas are going to see a decrease. Like, could you imagine going that speed on the DVP or on the Gardner? It's too curvy. There's too many turns. There's too many bikes that go down there too regularly. Yep. So.
And you know what? Perfect example. I've got a relatively new car. I'm a bit of a sports car guy. And have I taken that car up to 200 kilometers per hour? Absolutely. But it was on a racetrack. So you know what? I did it legally. And had anything happened, there was ambulance, there was fire, there was marshals there, the whole 9 yards. Would I ever do that on a city street? The only time that we are permitted to speed is when it's an emergency and that we've got a priority 1 call where maybe it's somebody's injured or dying, that sort of thing. So we've got exceptions to that. Yeah. The general public doesn't. So the fact that your passenger has to go to the bathroom does not mean it's okay for you to speed. That's just an explanation. It's not an excuse. It's a life and death situation. Quite often, and in that case, we can justify it, but we are still responsible for our actions. So we are trained to drive a vehicle at those types of speeds in different environments. The average person behind the wheel of a motor vehicle has not got that training, and as a result, is putting more and more people at risk.
No, that's an excellent point. And just to add on to what Brandon was saying, the Autobahn, the average area, any inhabited area of the Autobahn, it has a range of 80 to 130 kilometers an hour. It's not unlimited everywhere. It's only in certain rural areas or that are safer, where risks can be taken. And there are risks. And when we do see on the Autobahn collisions at high speed, they have a path of what's the word I'm looking for? Destruction, the explosion of parts that fly everywhere, debris path. It's enormous. It can span kilometers at times.
Yep. My father years ago was in Germany on the Autobahn. They hit a fog, so everyone started slowing down. A Porsche came ripping through at full speed, and he said how this guy stopped that car is beyond him, but he managed to stop that car without getting into a collision.
Wow.
So the point is, not saying that guy was the best driver ever, but he's used to an environment that was designed for those types of speed. But had he made a mistake or perhaps wasn't able to stop that car, the consequences would have been devastating. We haven't got that environment here in Canada. We have people that don't know how to drive in winter weather. We have people that don't know how to drive in rain or fog. People that in some cases will not drive on an expressway because they're scared to. The reality is that a lot of devices that are being installed into vehicles, the lane change assist, the early warning brake detection, the autonomous features, that is taking away from the driver ability because now you're depending on technology. So what you can't beat is physics. If you are going too fast and you can't stop in time, you are going to have a collision, regardless of the amount of safety devices that are placed into a vehicle. You still have to have the ability to judge what's happening ahead of you. And the reality is people are distracted. They're depending on the computer or the vehicles to do all the work. The reality is if that car doesn't stop in time, you as the driver are still on the hook.
And the faster you go, the higher the chances of severe injury. A low speed collision, it's understandable, it happens. The high speed collision is going to result in a greater injury, whether it be for the occupants of the vehicle that's or whatever you're hitting. It's just a bad day at the office.
Absolutely, and you know what, we've seen, unfortunately, many collisions that have resulted in death. And I mean, in some cases, I've seen engines ripped out of cars and sliding down the street after a collision. Cars are completely obliterated. And what is the commonality? Speed. And now 60 kilometers per hour hitting a pole is going to be significant. 80 or 100, that pole is going to go through the car because the pole is not going to break. It's the car that's going to break. And you're inside that car. So the pole at the end has got a couple of scratches. You, on the other hand, might be dead. So, and quite often what we've seen in the past is a lot of high-speed collisions. The car always hits a pole. I don't know what it is. That pole is 18 inches wide, and there's one every 30 meters. Somehow cars hit those poles. And you know what? The decision was made by the way that car was being handled, that your destination's already been picked. And that includes, in some cases, hitting that pole.
It's something that's unique to Toronto is very often, because we have such a fantastic subway or transit system. Many people who drive or are licensed go years without using a vehicle or only are occasional operators. And driving is very much a perishable skill, whether it be, we talk about it in motorcycling all the time. The more you ride, the better you become. You practice, you develop those skills. Well, it's the same thing for driving. And as you mentioned, those features are taking away from your ability to work on it. So something as simple as a backup camera. How many people can back up a vehicle, never mind a truck, but a smaller car, without utilizing and taking advantage of a rear camera and sensors so they don't hit things? That was all done without for many, many, many years, and people developed skills around it. Well, I don't know how many people can still do it. Even myself, I really like the fact that I don't touch the wall when I'm backing into a spot because I have all these wonderful gizmos to save my bumper.
But did you know that during the I guess it would be the G2 road test to exit, you are not permitted to use the backup cameras?
Really?
And the information that I've heard from the examiners are that the drivers are shocked. Well, I have to use that camera. No, you actually have to look behind you. And because the field of view that you have with a camera is limited, and the field of view that you look through your rear windows is much, much greater. But then you also have the cross traffic alerts. Well, again, if you're paying attention, you don't need them. But quite often, people are depending on those devices. And when they fail, they're backing out and they get involved in a collision. Well, my car didn't tell you were there. It's not the car's responsibility. You, as the operator, are responsible to know what vehicles are around you, what's happening around you. And the reality is, even now when we look at anti-spin or anti-yaw controls, where if you're on snow and whatnot, the car starts to spin. Something that people don't realize is, and we've seen it, we've done some test environments with it, where the anti-spin controls, if you know what you're doing as a driver and you feel the car start to slip out and you start to make those corrections, the anti-slip system then comes in behind you and now augments or increases the reaction. So now the car is overcorrecting.
Yeah.
Now you as the driver have to fight the computer. So a lot of people, when the car starts to go out of control, they sit like this and just hope that things are going to work out well. Problem is, the person that to date myself, that have the experience where those controls weren't available, they're countering, they're steering where they want to go because that's what you're taught. Once those controls now start to become active because the gyroscopes and everything are picking up the changes in velocity, direction, altitude, attitude, and everything in the car. Then you start to act on your inputs. Now it's like, this car's out of control because now you're fighting to control it. The computer's fighting to control it, and the road's trying to control it. So I've experienced it because I tested it on in a parking lot to see what would happen. And the surprise I was in for, I couldn't react fast enough. I still was able to get control of the car, but I did not expect the computer to kick in on top of my corrections.
Wow.
And this is my point. Everything now is moving towards autonomy. Whether we talk about Tesla, we talk about Ford Mach-E's, whatever, everybody's moving towards automation. The reality is, at some point, it outstrips the capability of the automation, and you have to be involved as a driver. Problem is, does the computer now recognize that you've taken control? Because it can. I'd argue no. So what's going to happen? You're going to have some cars going out of control, and it's just going to get ugly because the person driving can't control the car, neither can the car control the car. Now you're at the mercy of the road and physics.
And if you really become comfortable with you letting the computer do it all, you get into a car that doesn't have that computer or capability, and you're in big trouble.
Oh yeah, my wife, parallel parking, she hates it, but she'll look at a spot. Oh, you can't park in there. Watch me, and I pull in the first shot. But my brother-in-law, he uses the automated feature to park. He has to pull up. It says, okay, you're far enough ahead. Put the button, and the car literally backs in. I'm like, I would never trust it, and B, it's below me to let the car do it for me. I wouldn't. It wouldn't happen. But the reality is, there's a perfect example of somebody that doesn't know how to parallel park, and is using, depending on technology to do it. Guess what? The technology will break, or something won't work right. And then when you have a collision, who's responsible? You. You could have avoided it. So, like I said, it's autonomy. I think is the next biggest leap in cars. And it is going to be coming very, very quickly. I think we're at level 4 right now. Level 5 is full autonomous. Tesla's not level 5. I think they're level 4. But the point being, when you see these images where these guys are sitting in the back texting while the car's driving itself, in some cases, you can call the car to you, as I understand it from Tesla. So like you push a button and it'll come around the corner, come to your driveway, pick you up. Awesome. The reality is, I still don't trust it. I had semi-autonomous level 3 in my car. I did not trust it. I was scared. Is this going to stop? You're coming in at 120, 130, and all of a sudden traffic comes to a stop. I can see much further before the computers see it. I'm not going to wait for the computer to decide. Yeah. Oh, all of a sudden it's early warning collision. We're going to hit somebody. Well, it's a bit late for me to deal with it. And, it is what it is. You as the driver have to be engaged into the operation. And quite often we're texting, we're shopping, we're FaceTiming, watching YouTube, watching videos. I saw a guy watching Al Jazeera TV because he wants to keep up to date on what's happening back home. But you're in Canada. You're driving a car. Why are you watching the news in the middle of the day, driving a car on University Avenue? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, many people believe that that's close to autonomy as you can get. And I've seen it in court where people get up and try and defend themselves saying, well, I wasn't driving. I was just sitting there. The car was driving. And they don't realize that is, you're still responsible. You're supervising. The car won't go without you in the driver's seat, at least not. And you have to remind it that you're there on a regular basis. And they don't see stop signs. They don't see red lights. They only see a car in front stopping. So there's things you have to do manually, at least right now. And frankly, I'm good with that. I did test drive a Tesla. I tried a Model X. A friend of mine purchased one, and I was freaked out. It parked. It was really cool. I don't ever want to do it again.
I was going to say, I wouldn't let it do it. I'll do it myself. Thank you.
It took everything for me to just not touch, because it was very unnerving. I'm a driver. I've been driving since the day I turned 16 years old. And same year I got my motorcycle license. I don't want something to do it for me. Hell, I wouldn't mind having a stick shift over having even an automatic, because it's fun. It's part of driving. Anyway, I can go on for hours. We'll have to do this again, but we should probably wrap it up. We still have to talk about the wonderful world of arrests from the weekend. And if you want to stick around, you can. Otherwise, we can say goodbye so you can get on with your day. Up to you. But Brandon, you've got have you got the stats up in front of you for what happened over the weekend?
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. I do have to head out on the road. So
okay, sounds good, Sarge. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. We'll see you again. Take care. Okay. So we didn't get any questions. I'm surprised because Sergeant Stibbe is a wealth of knowledge. He was a media officer for many years here at Traffic Services. So he would have been a good guy to sting with some good hard hitting questions. But well, the opportunity has passed. So we'll get him next time. If you hear he's coming online, make sure you set your clocks and come join us for live chat. But yeah, Brandon, if you've got those stats, let's talk about them because I think it was 8 arrests. Is that right?
It was 8 arrests. One of those drivers actually assaulted a police officer during the arrest, and then 4 of those drivers were over twice the legal limit. And then there were 7 additional drivers who received suspensions for actually being within the warn range. So not quite impaired operation, but still too much to be driving on the roadways.
So the warn range is when it's below criminal, but it's above the legal limit to drive, so you end up with a suspension. And we always talk about this whenever we mention warn range suspensions. It's that it's not just a warning. It's not a get out of jail free. It's not it goes on your record. And if you have another warn range suspension in a 10-year period, it's going to go up. And if you have these on a regular basis, you're going to end up with an interlock system in your vehicle. You're not going to be able to drive without paying exorbitant insurance rates. An interlock is very costly to maintain, and you're going to have to provide a breath sample just to start your car and randomly to continue driving.
I was hoping to actually ask the sergeant about it because they had that one yesterday at like 3 p.m. on a Tuesday or something like
really?
that. Really? Yeah. Someone blew failed a roadside test on a Tuesday, 3 p.m. downtown. So to his point, like the Toronto police have been doing this for a while. We get that crime happens at all times in all places. So we're not focusing our efforts. Oh, okay, today we're in 52 and 55. That's where all the officers are going to be.
Yeah.
Nope. We're everywhere that we need to be when we need to be there. And a lot of that comes down to the folks out there. When you guys make a complaint, when you advise us that there's an issue within your area, we action it. Sean, you and I were out at that intersection this week.
Yes.
Because it's a hot spot, and we know that.
Yeah, there's obviously areas that we have knowledge of that people tend to abuse different, whether it be signs, speed, and our efforts are there. And despite the fact that we're there on a regular basis, behavior continues. So we do our best to change that behavior through enforcement, education through enforcement, but it doesn't always work. And funny thing about that, it was as soon as we got out of the car and set up, a gentleman ran out from his body shop and said, "Hey, I just finished watching you on TikTok." It was pretty cool. I think it was one of my first, TikTok famous sightings.
Yes, one of many to come.
No, it's okay. I'm not. It's wonderful. It's nice to know that people are watching. It's nice to know it's local people watching and that the messages are getting out. So about that, we are going to be going live on TikTok at 9:00 this morning. If you have questions and didn't want to ask here, but you want to ask there, come join us. Download the app. We're there Monday to Friday, 9 to 10 a.m. It's amazing. We had 360 people in the room for about an hour yesterday, and it was like a fire hose of questions. It was amazing. So we love the engagement. We love the questions. There's no silly question. We answer everything we possibly can in the period of time. Try and get everybody. We've got about 700 questions that are in our Q&A section. If we don't get them live, we get you later with a video response. That being said, what else we got? I think that's it. I think we've done it. Clint was a great guest to have. We'll have to have him back again. Tomorrow, we're trying to get Erin Urquhart. That's TPS_Bikehart. She is a parking enforcement officer, and she is a media officer, but she's focused on bicycle safety. She does a lot of work protecting bicycle lanes in the city of Toronto, and we want to talk about that because it is the two-wheel safety campaign, and we are focusing on motorcycle and bicycle safety. So with that, we will say goodbye. Have a wonderful day. Everybody stay safe. Hopefully the weather holds up. Brandon, anything to add before we go?
Stay tuned because there's lots more to come, guys.
Stay tuned. I like it. I like it a lot. All right, perfect. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Take care.
Take care, guys.